So, I have a confession to make. I don't think I watched any indie films last year. So to remedy that, I will go through a list of 1,000 favorited videos on YouTube to try to find those films that I missed and wanted to watch at a later date. I then compiled the list and... Oh no. I only have like a week to watch all these. Since this is a best list, I will obviously talk about the best ones that I've stumbled across. Now, the only caveat is that we are going to exclude animation, just like the Oscars, am I right? However, only because, let's be real, it needs to be its own video. But today's focus is on indie films in particular. Now, I was going to exclude documentaries as well. However, there was only one on this list, and it is something I was not expecting, but I actually really appreciate, and I wish more artists did this in general. JPEG Mafia and Danny Brown dropped an album together, and with that album came a documentary of their writing and recording process of that album. As a person who also makes music, I think it is a really neat way of not only marketing an album, but also it's just so cool to see the process of pure creation on an artistic audio level. I'll be real, I miss working on music with local friends, so seeing this on film was really inspirational for me personally. In the description it reads, showing some of the recording process. Danny would tell me what kind of sound he wanted and I would go home and make it. After the beats were made, I would take trips to see Danny. I would bring him 5 to 6 beats a trip. We captured vocals to the ones he liked. Some of the songs in the documentary don't even appear in the album, and it's rumored that there might be a sequel album at some point, so maybe we'll eventually hear the rest of the sessions in a finished format. It's just so cool to see these two artists' different styles and mindsets being showcased in this documentary. Current State of Artist is a short film that is all about the conflict of AI art versus the artist. On the outside, it might just look like a channel update video, but what's different is that you can tell a lot of thought was put into the cinematography, color grading, and sound design. It's very short, but because of that, it's very to the point and doesn't waste a second of time. In 2024, Žujović made 12 movies in 12 months, a feat only a madman could pull off. I was originally going to cover all of them, but after watching all 12, there's only a few of these films that really spoke to me. Anyone else but me has a lot of starring members, the aspect ratio is different, and it feels like more of the budget went to this film in particular than his first film. It's about an actor who has too much ego to realize that his actions have consequences. He puts on multiple different personalities depending on his dates for the sake of his acting class. This one definitely has some dramedy elements integrated into some of the scenes, and compared to the first film, this was hilarious, especially the scene with the movie inside of a movie. It's a pretty meta film in general, since most of the actors play actors themselves in universe, and overall, it will definitely take multiple watches to truly understand the full story. Hello My Beautiful Creatures is a stop motion film using various toys. The setup to the film are the toys activate a machine to wake up their quote-unquote god, a human, so he can start his day. Even the human is stop motion, making me question, is this entire 2.5-hour film stop motion? No, there are a few short scenes with live action, but they are to juxtapose the toys and the human. Topics of the film include religion, jealousy, and general small-town antics. What's weird is that the toys eat, which implies that these toys are in fact alive? Is this human keeping them captive as some questionable experiment? I'm not too sure at this very current moment, but this film brings up some questions. There's also singing included in the film, blending this film as a multi-genre project. The longer this film goes on, it reveals commentary about immigration, isolation, dependency, animal abuse, and mob mentality. At about an hour in, it actually turns into a horror film about the brutality of imprisonment and cults for the sake of a heist. Remember how I said the toys can eat? Well, what are these toys? The more I watch this movie, the more messed up it becomes. Out of all of Joel's films that I've seen, this is the best one by far. By the end, the message comes across more clear than necessary due to an unnecessary narrator that only appears at the end, but it redeems itself by revealing how one person orchestrated the entirety of the town's destruction. It Just Takes Time brings us back to live action. Two guys travel in a van in this road trip movie. Keep in mind, this was the 5th movie in the collection, and it was released in late August, meaning Joel had only 4 months to make 7 more films. The landscapes in this film are definitely a highlight as they travel to meet their friend. This film feels like a sequel to the first film since this guy is living out of his van. During this film, it's alluded to that something happened to their mutual friend, but nobody wants to say what happened, and it's the most Midwest feeling film out of his collection so far, because most of the film is just his friends talking in different locations about anything and everything. And eventually, since it is the Midwest, you have to come up with your own version of fun, because otherwise there is quite literally nothing to do. And when there is nothing to do, it is incredibly easy to feel sad about life situations, especially grief. Love, Celeste opens with the question, who is Celeste? She'll send secret messages and shoes to these two guys, but why? These two guys have never met each other, so did Celeste orchestrate this? Yes, but again, why? Wait, actually 3 guys, because of the code that was given. Essentially, they have to open certain letters at a time, and each person has their own envelope to open whenever they feel the time is right. After being instructed to put their phones in a locked box, they attempt to spend a week in Dubai without electronics. The longer the film goes on, the more is revealed about the 3 guys and Celeste as a way to memorialize Celeste. This film is even a little bit more than that because it takes the rom-com angle and adds a tiny bit of horror. Existentialism starts to rear its head, and the film takes a turn into a doomsday movie. Eventually, there is a boiling point and all emotions lash out to reveal what happened to Celeste. And now, to end off this list, there is one found footage film and one traditional film that are the best indie films I've seen from 2024. Milk and Cereal is probably the biggest indie film on this list. Created by That's a Bad Idea at just over an hour, and it's a found footage film. Milk is the nickname of one of the main characters, and he is upset that his friend, Seven, invited someone who he doesn't know to his birthday party. Turns out the reason they are recording is for their channel called The Prank Bros. At about 8 minutes in, the horror angle starts to show itself, embodied as an old man. This man keeps appearing over and over and over again. However, he is not the real villain of the story. Meanwhile, the practical effects of the film are extremely impressive, and the storyline takes so many turns and has so many levels to how deep it is that I was hooked the entire time. Halfway through, things go off the rails to a point of shocking me, and then 2/3 of the way through, it gets even more intense, and I realized just how psychological this film actually is, cementing this as my favorite found footage film of 2024. And now the final film, Meat Cleaver. This is a short film where Wendy has a meat cleaver in her head. The juxtaposition and awkwardness of this film brings out the dark comedy, using mortality as a punching bag for laughs. There's another half to this story, and if it wasn't clear enough, this film is about heaven and hell. However, the characters' stories are actually tied in a very cleaver way that I was not expecting. I have been waiting for this film for so long, and now that I've finally seen it, I love it so much. Hilarious, introspective, and surprisingly metaphorical. In terms of traditional filmmaking, I'd say Meat Cleaver is a good representation of the power of film being art. Every single aspect of this film was designed in such a way that it is the antithesis of being a truly unique take on eternal tropes. This is by far my favorite indie film I've ever watched.